Okay, so as we take a look, ladies and gentlemen, we got 9.4 day 2, so this is just more practice of what we just did, some examples you might see. So the first thing is a little warm up. Brr, it's cold in here. We cannot solve these guys until what? Until we got our stuff equal to 0. Yes, sir. Okay, so what I see here is, first thing is when I factor, I don't want to factor where the leading guy is negative, like the x squared, so I always try to keep that positive. So I'm going to go ahead and move this guy over. Just use addition. Okay. So I've got x squared minus 24x and then plus 144, and that equals 0. Everybody okay with that? So I just added it over. Those are unlike terms. And now teach me how to factor t. Teach me how to factor. How do we do it? We got to come up with factors of x squared. So again, factors of f and L that add up to our OE term. So we know factors of x squared. I'll do those for you as x and x. What are factors of 144 that add up to a negative 24? Kelly, you got them? 12 and 12. Okay, 12 times 12 is 144, and now we need them to add up to a negative 24. So what do we know about our signs here? A girl, so they're both negative. Perfect. Okay. Now we set each one equals 0, but they're the same, right? So the nice thing is I only need to set one of these guys equal to 0. Since they're the same, I'll get the same answer. So again, add the 12 over. And we got x is 12. 12 minus 12 is 0, and 0 times anything is 0. There's only one solution here. All right, any questions with that? Okay. All right, next. That's my phone, yeah. Number 2, let's do a little factoring here. A little warm up, burr. Teach me how to factor t. Teach me how to factor. X squared minus 25 factors nicely. Yes, sir. Damien, you got it? Yeah, so we got x and x, right? And now we need factors of negative 25 that add up to nothing. There's no middle term. Gail, you got those?
5, 1 negative.
Right, factors of a negative, one's a plus and one's a minus. Okay, thank you, man. Working on our notes. So one's a plus, one's a minus, and then we set them equal to 0, right? Set this guy equal to 0. And we can set this guy equal to 0. And we solve it, right? Subtract over. We get x is negative 5. I always just do opposite of what I see, so I usually go from this step to this step, and you can too. I just do opposite of what I see in parentheses because negative 5 plus 5 turns into 0, and 0 times anything is 0. Okay, so you can do it too. You see x minus 5, you can go right to x equals positive 5. I do not need to see this work right here. Don't need to see it. All right, so that's a little review from yesterday, right? Yes, sir.
I was just curious, like for a variable, how can it equal multiple things? Or is it different x's?
Good question. Okay. Visually, so the question is, how can it equal two different things? Visually, this is going to be eventually a graph that we explore in the next chapter where it's y equals x squared minus 25. Like y equals x minus 25 is a line. This guy is called a parabola. Okay. And a parabola kind of looks like this. It's not linear, kind of looks like that. That's a 5. Okay. Now, when the other guy is 0, when the other side is 0, the line that equals y equals 0 is the x-axis. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to find out where it touches or crosses the x-axis. And in this case, it happens at -5 and +5. Okay, and the reason why there's two of them is because this is a curve now. Before, we dealt with a line, so you would see it only crosses in one spot. So this is a great question. I'm glad you're asking that. Okay. Now, to go even further, sometimes you might have a parabola that intersects in two spots, like we see it, so you'll get two answers. Sometimes you'll have a parabola that just kisses the x-axis, right there at the vertex, and will only have one solution, kind of like what we had on example 1. Okay, you'll see that it has one intersection at 12. And then you'll see sometimes you might have a parabola, a U shape, that never touches the x-axis. And then in that case, we'll find that's a no solution. You can't factor it, you can't solve it. Okay, not quite there yet, but so that's kind of the idea. I'm glad you asked that. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So sometimes there's two answers, sometimes there's one, sometimes there's none. Just kind of depends.
Is there 3, like a sine wave?
So with a sine wave continuously makes a wave shape, and there'd be an infinite amount of those potentially. Okay, unless the sine wave has been shifted up, and then it might not touch the x-axis at all. Okay. And when we get to example 1, we talked about this yesterday, is the degree of this guy's 3. So the shape of that one is no longer a quadratic or parabola shape. The shape of this one could look like this. It could go up, come down, and go back up. This is what we call a cubic function. So you can see it. And if it is a degree 3, you could have 1, 2, 3 solutions. Okay, so it kind of depends. Right. Any questions? So good question with that. When it gets cold, you guys can shut this down. I would wait until after notes. All right, so let's take a look at number 1. Little working on our goals here to solve quadratics again using that factoring technique here. Solving quadratics using factoring. What's the first rule of factoring, y'all? Don't talk about factoring in the second rule. Don't talk about factoring, but the real rule is G, C, F. Always ask yourself what the GCF is, if there is one. So you look for a GCF. What do you see there, Gail? R. You're a pirate back there. R. So we can take out an R. I have 4R cubed minus 9R equals 0. We have it equal to 0. Now we look to factor. We can take out an R. And now this gives me 4R squared and then minus 9. Okay, and now that's equal to 0. So as I take a look, now we look to factor further. So we can factor further this 4R squared minus 9, break that down. Okay, so factors of F and L add up to an OI term, but is there an OI term? There's no OI term. So when we factor these numbers are going to be exactly the same, but one's going to be a plus and one's going to be a minus. Okay, so factor, teach me how to factor. What are factors of 4R squared that are exactly the same? Who's got that? Colton, you got that? What did you say? 2 and 2. So 2R and 2R for you pirates. And now we got to come up with factors of -9. What are factors of -9? 3 and 3. And if it's factors of a negative, what do we know, Audrey? One's positive and one's negative. So +3 and -3. You guys okay with that? Okay, so I always like double checking off to the side. Check your outers and inners, your nose and smile of SpongeBob. 2r times negative 3 is negative 6r. 3 times 2r is 6r. Yes, that ends up to 0r. That has no OI term. There's no x term there. Okay. All right. Any questions on the factoring part? You guys can see this. All right. Any questions on the factoring? That's half the battle. Okay. Now again, the zero product property says we got to set each of these guys equal to 0. Okay, and then we can solve. Even this r right in front, we're going to set that guy equal to 0. This guy here, 2r plus 3, we set that equal to 0. And last but not least, let me see, let me use a black here. This guy right here, I'm going to set 2r minus 3 equal to 0. And then we're going to solve it. Okay, nice one is this one's already solved. We're done with that one. Okay, Griff, how do I solve this one? 2r plus 3 equals 0. First thing you would do? Minus the 3. If you guys are getting cold back there, let me know. It was getting super hot. We can close that window if you're freezing back there. I see Damien's like this. It's freezing. So we can close those if you need to. And then last step, Griff, what do we got to do? Divide by 2. Divide by 2. Now we got r is negative 3 over 2. So again, we have r equals 0. We have r equals negative 3 halves. And we have this last one. How do we solve this last one? Jet would be the first thing you do there, bud. Add the 3 over. We get 2r equals 3. And then the last step, Tyler, what can we do now? Yes, sir. Go ahead and divide, and I get positive 3 over 2. Okay, so final answers are these 3. If you want to write them all together with commas, 0, negative 3 halves, and 3 over 2, that'd be perfect. Okay. Visually, we kind of talked about this with Noah just a little bit ago. That's where, a little technical difficulty here. There we go. So that's where 3 answers, that's where it's touching or crossing the x-axis. So it's crossing at 0 and then plus or minus 3 halves. Okay. So good stuff. All right. Questions, y'all? All right. You want to do this last one, number 2? Ivan's like, no. What would we do if we started this thing? It's the first thing, Kel? Yeah, you want your stuff. Get your stuff equals 0. You can't do any factoring until you see the number 0, right? By itself. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move this guy over. And you see how these are out of order? I don't like how that order is. So let's put it in descending order. So the power of, in this case, t gets from big to small, right? So who would go first? Yeah, the 25t squared. We got a negative 15t now. And then this guy, that negative 4, goes by itself. Again, guys, these are all unlike terms. You can't combine those, right? Got to leave them all separate. So we got a nice, pretty trinomial that we got to try to factor. Okay. Any questions so far? All right, let's factor this guy. Do you see a GCF at all? Is there a if I look at every single number, do you see that they're divisible by all the same thing or anything like that? Gail says no. Okay. All right, so now we got to look at our outsides, factor our F's and L's. And then we got to check that OI. It's called guess and check. We guess. We don't know if it's right or not. So what are factors of 25, y'all? 5 and 5. What else? 1 and 25. Okay, and I think that's it, right? Now, if it's me, I'm going to choose the ones that are close together. And that's usually because that number right here is not very big. Now, I don't know if that's going to be right or not, but I'm going to choose 5t and 5t and then go from there. Okay? All right, now we got factors of our L. Factors of L. What's factors of -4? Gail, you got those?
1 and 4 and 2 and 2.
1 and 4 and 2 and 2. So those are my factors. Okay? Now, we got to check our outers and inners to give us -15t. And factors of negative, what do we know about factors of a negative number? One's a positive, one's a negative. So it could be plus, minus, minus, plus. I don't know. So this is where we're going to guess. Okay, so what do you want to try? I heard -4 and +1. Is that what you said? All right, I don't know. My hearing's not very good. I got to check this thing. Check my outsides. That's 5t. I check my insides. Is that what you said, Ivan? That's -20t. Is that okay? Is that what we want? That worked out. Is that what you said? Oh, you had them reversed? So you had plus, minus? Okay. I'm sorry, I thought that's what you said. So we go ahead and factor that thing. Is that thing factored? Yes, sir. That adds up to our middle term, doesn't it? Our smiling nose of Billy binomial or SpongeBob works out. Are we done? We're done, right? Oh, we're not done? What do we have to do? Yes, sir. We got to set it equal to 0 and solve it, right? So set each of these quantities equal to 0. Some of you guys are really good and you can do it in your head, right? Like Will. Will's already done with his notes. So Will, set this equal to 0. What do you get?
4/5.
Okay. Some of us need to actually show that work. We add the 4 over. We divide by 5. And we get 4/5, just like Will said. And then we do the exact same thing for the other one. We take 5t plus 1 and set it equal to 0. Now again, some of you guys can do this in your head. You'll opposite sign, right? We subtract that 1 over. And we get -1. We divide by 5. So final answer there is -1/5. Okay. So again, we talked about that's degree 2. That guy's largest exponent is 2. So most of the time, let me zoom out so you can see it all now. So most of the time, we're going to see when it's degree 2, you're going to see 2 answers here. Again, that's where that parabola, that quadratic crosses the x-axis. A lot of times that happens in 2 spots. London. Yes, hurry, because you're going to miss the good stuff. All right, do you guys have any questions?